Hello, Andrei.
Hello.
I'm very happy to be here with you today to what I believe is going to be our first episode of a very long list of episodes of podcast in our new podcast, and I'm happy to present today's topic, which it's something very dear to me. I will introduce it like this. For me, it's very important to have precision in communication, and that being a value of mine, I thought that we can approach the topic of communication at work and relationship between his employees and employer in order to see how could precise communication better help you to be happier, why not, and have a better work-life balance, be a more productive employee, and so on. So welcome, Andre, to our podcast. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for asking, Andre. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. First episode of hopefully a lot of episodes, hopefully useful, hopefully pleasant to you all. Great topic today. Looking forward to talking about it.
That's great. So what I was thinking is that we as an employee, we have a responsibility to communicate our needs at the workplace. And many times we lack the tools necessary in order to do that in a useful way, in a efficient way, let's call it like this. So most of the times it happens that we would rather talk with our colleagues about how poor is the environment or how bad is the manager instead of trying to actively solve the problem. So that was basically the underlying problem that prompted this topic, and I strongly believe that you as a simple employee, not even a manager, you have a responsibility to try to communicate your needs and try to have them met by the managers. So what do you think about this topic? Whose responsibility it is in the end for your well-being as an employee in a company?
When you talk about the fundamental thing, it's everyone's individual responsibility to take care of themselves. And responsibility may not even be the best word. It's just a fact of life. You need to make sure you're okay. No matter how much the people around you actually care about you, even if you have a good manager, even if you have a good team, even if it's like a best case scenario environment, nobody's going to understand what you need and what you want and what you feel as well as you do. You are the owner of your own career or of your own well-being, of your own professional satisfaction, of your own whatever you want to call it. So you always need to think like that. You're like the CEO of your own career. Like, what am I doing here? What's working okay? What's not working okay? What do I need? What's bothering me? Who do I need to ask in order to fix what, to get what, to change what? And you need to have that kind of perspective, and don't if you wait, there's a problem, for example, and if you wait hoping that somebody else is going to see it and somebody else is going to fix it, it might be too late. And yes, if you want to talk about what other people should do, maybe yes, maybe someone else should have seen that. But that's an useless conversation in my mind. I mean, that doesn't solve your problem. That doesn't solve the fact that you have a problem and you're suffering from it and it's not getting fixed. And the fact that, yeah, your manager should have seen it is a conversation that doesn't help you at all. So I totally agree with you that I think everyone should take ownership of their own happiness at work and do whatever they need to do to fix their problem and improve their situation.
Yeah, that's the idea, but the way you phrased the answer prompted the question in my mind, and I'm curious what your opinion about it. Um, where do you believe this expectation comes from? The expectation that others should see your problem and others should fix your problems and try to create a better work environment for you at work.
At the end of the day, I am responsible to make my life the way I want it to be. So even if my boss forgets something, or if I get bothered by something, I need to stand up and make that clear. why people don't do that, and people frequently don't do that. So I've seen a lot of people that sort of, they get unhappy about something. It doesn't matter what. They think something is unfair. They want something, that something is not being given to them. They ask for something, and they're unhappy. And instead of sort of being very mature about that and going to their boss and sitting down and saying, I want this, I need this, I think this was not okay, can we do this differently? They're just unhappy, and they start behaving in a way in which they sort of hint at their unhappiness. And the boss is somehow going to figure it out that, hey, why is that person behaving like that? Maybe they're unhappy. Maybe I should go ask them why they're unhappy. So I think that comes from a bunch of places, education,
Yeah.
culture, whatever. I don't think it's a productive way of going about it for yourself, first and foremost.
Yeah.
So everything I'm going to say in this podcast is 100% selfish in the sense I'm not going to say things about, work for the greed of the company. That's a different conversation. I'm just saying how to make your life, each and every one of you, how to make your own professional life better.
Yeah. So two things here. Firstly, I want to clear this up. We are not saying that companies are bad or not paying attention to employees, are trying to diminish the impact of an employee in the workplace, or just pushing them away and treating them poorly. That's not what is this about. It's about how, even if the company has the best intentions, sometimes it happens that your needs aren't met. So you should be proactive and trying to solve them. And
Yeah.
I don't want to demonize the businesses and the corporations, because this is not about this. But another interesting idea is, like, I believe that people are scared, have a intrinsic fear to go talk to the managers about their problems. And I think that can have multiple sources. Yeah, maybe some of them are environmental, like with the society we are living in, and that we were discouraged since a young age, at least in Romania, not to speak up, not to create problems, not to ask questions. But most of the time, I believe the bigger problem is that I think we lack the skills as employees to know how to approach such a conversation that is potentially conflictual, that is potentially contentious, and you'll create tension between you and the business, or you are the manager. So one of the most one is the simplest solution, but it's not easy to achieve, but it's a simple solution, is trying to be a better communicator. And that means you have more strength and more self-assurance, and you are more confident when you're approaching such conversations. So that's a way in which you can, by yourself, try to improve the happiness at workplace by trying to be a better communicator and go beyond the fear of having these conversations.
I 110% agree with that. So happy you said it, because that's how I see communication as well. Whenever I do a communication training, sometimes people think that it's about just communicating prettier, write a better email, be more eloquent, improve your oratory skills, and that's part of it. But the big problem with communication is, just like you said, you have someone who's in a situation, you're in a meeting, the manager says something, a colleague says something, the client says something, you think that's wrong, that's not a good idea, you think there's a better way of doing things, you would like to say, hey, I think that's a problem because, but you don't know how to say it. You get emotional, you're nervous, you don't have enough confidence in yourself to contradict that person. You don't know how to contradict someone. You've been taught that a contradiction is a problem, so you don't say anything. And you get frustrated because maybe you're right, and maybe it actually turns out that they were wrong and you had the right idea, but it didn't say the right idea. And you get frustrated again and again and again and again, and you feel like all the wrong decisions are being made, and you have all the right ideas, but nobody's listening to you because you don't say them, or when you do say them, you don't know how to say them well enough, so they don't understand them, they're not convinced by them. And that is a lose-lose situation, because soon enough you're going to get demotivated, you're going to quit that that job. So you lose because you go through all that stress, and they lose because they lose a good person.
I think most of the companies appreciate when you speak up. And we believe as employees, we live under the impression that they will punish us if we speak up or do ask questions or try to engage with the conversation to find a better solution for that problem, specific problem. But in my personal belief, at least, is that the
Mhm.
companies will appreciate that because we will see that you are engaged, you are trying to solve problems, yeah, and I don't believe that you're going to be punished for it. In your
No,
experience,
no.
how do you see this happening in companies? Is it
So
okay to speak up or not?
absolutely, and I don't want to say company because company is like an impersonal thing, but
Yeah.
the particular people you're talking to, like a manager, your teammates, whoever is in that
Mm.
conversation. Sure, there's exceptions. There's always exceptions. There's always weird cases. But generally speaking, from my experience, most managers of all types appreciate it when people try to take initiative and do things, even if sometimes you come up with a proposal and it's not the right proposal or it's not feasible in that moment for whatever reason. They still appreciate that. And it's not, again, let's be very selfish. Let's not even go to more elevated reasons. They appreciate it because it saves them time and work. It's easier for them
Yeah.
to have people who try to do things, who try to change things, who have initiatives, than to have people where they need to go and tell each other, oh, you do this, you do this, you do the other thing. So even if you come up with a proposal that's wrong in the sense that maybe you don't have all the information and you propose something and it's not possible to be done for whatever reason, if you do it reasonably in the sense that it's a reasonable proposal and you explain it well, it's still going to be appreciated. And
Hmm.
I think that's another key thing when you talk about communication. You expect that most of your ideas and most of your proposals will not happen. That's how
Hmm.
these things work. When you go to your manager with something, it's not like you go twice a year with the big idea and they say yes. If you think like that, it's very difficult to deal with it because it's very scary and it's not the right way to do it. Imagine a
Hmm.
continuous conversation and you have like a little idea, a little proposal every week, every couple of days. It comes naturally. 50% of them, 70% of them, 80% of them are not going to happen. That's how life is for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's just a continuous process of, hey, let's do this, let's try this, what about this, what about that? And slowly, things are going to get better and you're going to get more happy in what you do.
Yeah, and in that process, you get better at making these proposals. And there is also that saying that you miss 100% of the shots you're not taking. So basically,
Yeah.
waiting for the perfect opportunity, it's you missing out on learning opportunities, improvement opportunities, and so on. So I think it's very important to speak up when it's necessary, as soon as possible, as often as possible, even if it's just an exercise for you to get better
Mhm.
at making these proposals. But yes, always have in mind that idea that most of them will not be will not be met, because you do not have the entire understand the entire picture. You do not understand the entire picture of the context. So most of the times the decision is going to go in another way. But if you can go past this, the exercise is very useful for you. I want to go back a bit to something you were saying a bit earlier regarding the communication trainings, people expecting that trainings are teaching them to speak more eloquent and more beautifully and use fancy words, and that's about it. And here we have to make the distinction between manner and matter. Yeah, most of many communication trainings approach the manner in which you speak to people and help you with tips and tricks to be more articulate, let's say. But
Mhm.
I think the secret here is that you should work on the matter. What are you saying? It's more important in the beginning than how you are telling it to the other person. So
Mhm.
For example, if you are trying to present a solution, you might get lost in details and metaphors and something like that, and people miss completely the point or the idea you're having. Just try to find the shortest way to present the idea in the clearest way, and then in time work in improving the way you deliver that idea. So this is the example why I find useful public speaking training for overcoming the fear of public speaking, but I do not find it useful in presentations in corporation, for example, when you need to be extremely precise and punctual about the stuff you are saying. So focus on the manner and less on the matter, on the matter, less on the manner, at least in the beginning. How do you feel about this?
I agree with that, and I think that this idea of figuring out what to say in a way that is concise but clear enough, and also from the point of view of the people you're talking to. If you ask someone to present something, whatever, tell me something about this notebook. In a work environment, when I talk about this notebook, 99% of the case, I need to think, what does this notebook mean to the people I'm talking to? What do I want from the people I'm talking to? You always want something from the people you're talking to in a business environment. And by want, I don't mean something, like money or something hidden. You're talking to them for a reason. You want them to approve something. You want them to help you with something. You want them to give you something like a budget or whatever. You're not just talking. We're not just talking over coffee. I want something from you. So when I talk about this notebook is an example, I need to understand what this means to you and phrase my arguments from that point of view. So it's not about what it means to me, or there's just part of it. And this is one big thing. When people talk about something, they talk about what it means to them, not about what it means to the audience. But I think, and another thing, I think people make it more difficult for them than it needs to be. People sometimes have this naive understanding of communication. It's like a duel between knights. You have one chance, one opportunity, like Eminem said, and you prepare your case and you prepare your speech and you go to the meeting and you say something very passionately, and they look at you and they say yes or they say no. I think if you end up in this situation, that's a big problem in itself. Sometimes you end up in this situation, but in 99% of the cases, you shouldn't end up in this situation. And what do I mean by that? I mean, talk about problems before they become big problems. If you're unhappy with something in the team, if you're unhappy with something in the project, and you don't say anything this time, and you don't say anything next time, and you don't say anything next time, and you let it build up, and 6 months later, it's like a huge problem, you can't take it anymore, and now you go and talk about it, it's probably too late. Because even if they agree with you, even if they understand what you're saying, you probably want some kind of radical change that cannot happen overnight. Even if they agree with you, it just cannot happen. It's probably too late. So address it from the beginning. Also, if I have to make a proposal to a bunch of managers, whoever, next week, I want something from them. I want a budget for something next Friday. And at that meeting, I have 10 minutes to explain my case. Between now and next Friday, I'm going to do my best to get in touch with each of those managers, one by one, one-on-one, informally, and sort of understand it. It's nothing dirty about this. Just what do you expect? What do you expect me to have in my presentation? What are the kind of things that you want to see? What are the kind of numbers you expect me to bring? How does a good proposal look like? What do you think I should be mindful of when I ask for this? This is not cheating in any way. We're not playing a game here. We're not at school. This is business. It's absolutely normal to get in touch with the stakeholders and ask them, what do you expect me to propose? And when I actually go and make that proposal next Friday, ideally, nothing I say should be a surprise to anyone. And ideally, all of them should kind of know what I'm asking for, and all of them should be kind of supporting me because I've integrated their feedback into my proposal, and it becomes just a formality. Like, yeah, I put it together well, but it's not that like, oh, I'm going there and it's like one of those, Lion's Den kind of TV shows when I go and they're sitting like that That's worst case scenario. You should never be in that situation. You should work to
But
never get into that situation.
why do you believe that's still happening a lot of in companies? Because I also have the feeling that this is the case rather than being communicative and going to talk with everybody who's gonna be in that important meeting beforehand.
In my experience, there's a number of reasons, but one reason is what I call an engineering mindset. Engineers usually approach things in a very engineering kind of way. So if you have a team of technical people that needs to make a proposal to a client next week, they approach it very mechanically, usually, typically, like, okay, let's understand what the client wants. Let's get some requirements as good as we can. Then we go for a week and we build the perfect proposal, and then we come back and present it. So they don't use communication to its fullest impact. They don't see communication as an essential thing. And what do I mean by that? Keeping constant touch with the client, try to find out as much as possible, try to talk to anyone you can, try to prepare as much as you can that meeting. They just don't use communication. They're not used to using communication to its fullest advantage.
What I feel is that people are defaulting to their most comfortable way of working, and most likely if you are a more conscious person, it's not necessarily an engineer, but any conscious person will want to do the due diligence before presenting any idea into the world, because that person will knows that the idea will be criticized. And I think that's the comfort zone. I'm going to work and do my best on my own, and then hopefully it's going to go great. Sadly, not all the time it goes great, so people get frustrated and disappointed. But I think there is another factor here. People do not have the tools and do not have the awareness that they could do that. They do not feel like they can approach a higher level manager and just write them an email and, hey, I'm preparing for the meeting that's upcoming next week. What are your expectations for that meeting? How can I better prepare to have a great meeting for all of us? So I think it's really important, as you were saying earlier, to have those conversations and prepare, but you have to have the skills in order to even think about doing that. So I think that's beyond defaulting to your comfort zone. You should add those tools in your backpack in order to be able to be a better communicator and a better problem solver. So it's like strange for some people to do that, for some reason.
Yeah. I think for most people, they just don't do that. It's very easy to, when you go into a context, a situation, a company, it's very easy to, without even realizing, to do things the way things are done, sort of, right? So you go there and go, okay, so this is how we do this and we do that, and we have this meeting and we have that meeting, and there's this manager and that manager, and this guy decides this and that girl decides that. So I'm just going to do what everyone else does. It's difficult, although it shouldn't be, to let me do it differently. Let's approach that person or talk to this person or ask this question. Or
is this related in any way to employees' attitude towards risk? What I'm trying to say is that employees perceive talking to upper management or to their colleagues the risk of being exposed for lack of knowledge, whatever, of not being professional enough, skilled enough, etc., etc. So what I'm revolving again to is the idea that we are not speaking up because we believe it's risky, but it's risky because we do not have the tools to know how to present the ideas, because you don't have to imply, I have no idea what I'm doing here, please help me out. That's a way of saying, give me help to prepare for that meeting. But another way would be, I want your input, I want to make it valuable for you, and so moving the conversation from you to the person you're speaking to. So that's why I was hinting to risk.
I think I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to figure out a situation where it's difficult to define risk sometimes, because I've seen people, like typical situation in IT, for example, where I have most of my experience. I've seen people that are very good IT professionals, that they know that the risk for them, in a sense of the word, is low to zero. So nobody's going to fire them. They're incredibly valuable. They're like super important employees, and it's not like somebody's going to say is going to not only fire them, but nobody's going to say anything bad to them, because good technical people are extremely difficult to find, and they know that. So on one level of the conversation, they know that the risk is minimal, that they're good people, that they're extremely valuable and important to the company, and they could pretty much say almost anything, of course, I mean, within reason, and nobody's going to be upset with them. So the risk is very low, and they know it. And also, if something happens that they need to change the job, just to think about the worst case scenario, they will find the job in the next 5 minutes. So the risk is literally zero in a very factual way. But at the same time, many of the same people are very nervous and emotional and stressed about speaking up. So the risk is a different kind of risk, and it's probably like what you're saying, some kind of a psychological thing. Like they're not, maybe we're not used to not being 100% sure about something, and sometimes we get something wrong, and that's okay. And sometimes we make mistakes, and sometimes we have half of an idea and it's not a full idea, but we can talk about that half of an idea and see how we develop it together. And maybe it's about, things like that. A lot of the times people trying to, or thinking they need to be 100% sure and correct about the things they say.
I think our podcast is a perfect example of how to explore ideas, because we have an idea, a general idea in which we want to go, but we are exploring ideas together. And I encourage everybody to do this, because it's really hard to have a conversation with yourself and reach different outcomes. So no matter how many times you have the same conversation with yourself in your head, it's not gonna help you a lot. But if you are doing this with other people, you'll be able to better your idea, to create a more eloquent idea, more refined, better idea. And then when you go in that important meeting, going back to our example, you'll be able to actually articulate an idea that is valuable for everybody. So I think it's a very important exercise, and I hope a lot of people will take example and try to have more conversations, even if they are not sure about where the conversation is going, because there is value in exploring those ideas. So I think we are getting kind of close to the final. So if you would allow me, I would like to pinpoint a couple of the most important ideas we had together in this podcast. I want to package them as like little tips and tricks for everybody. We're trying to be a better communicator at work. One idea is just speak up. Most of the companies will not punish you for doing this. It's clear they're going to see you as a valuable employee who's engaged in trying to better understand and better help the company or the business. Another idea we were talking about fear of speaking up, and that's reasonable. And there are a lot of communication tools that can help you to overcome that fear, and try to look up to internal training, for example, in companies, or external training that will help you to be a better communicator. One thing to do to overcome that fear is to focus on the matter over manner. Focus on what's the idea you want to present, and trying to presenting as precise as possible, and leave all the fluff out. And the fluff can come later. After that, we talked a bit about context. It's really important to understand the context in which you are presenting your idea. And the idea here would be go and try to get the buy-in of other participants in the conversation and the meetings you're having. Talk with them before the meeting, try to understand their needs, and try to formulate then an idea that is not about you. It's about for the better of the group and the business. So I think we had a very productive conversation. I loved it a lot. Any final notes, Andrei?
Yeah, so you summarized it very well. One thing I would like to add is the magical solution for me is take it step by step and speak up about things early, before the problems become big problems. It's almost like a cheat code, because if you talk about something early before it's a major problem, you can do a few very important things. One, you don't have to be 100% sure. You can just say things like, hey, I'm worried about this, or I'm considering this, or I'm thinking that this might be a good idea. I'm not totally sure, but I'm just thinking about it. What do you guys think? So you can approach things in that way, because it's early enough that you don't have to approach it in a different way. And also, from an emotional and psychological point of view, if you find it difficult to propose things, to contradict people, to whatever, the more frequently you do it, and the earlier you do it, the easier it gets. And you get practice as well. And in time, you will get better. And that is going to solve everything.
I think that's a great way to end the podcast here. Thank you for this wonderful conversation, and see you
Thank
in the
you.
next one.
See you. Bye-bye.